I've been doing hot takes for a while. This is an extra special episode. That's right, I partnered up with the official Marvel Snap Discord to get the hottest takes from the official space to talk about the game. This is a much more wide-ranging episode than normal. Let's jump right into it. One of the cool things about this is that it allowed people to give much more detail in their hot takes, which I think is awesome, but this is a big one. 5-cost cards suck. 4-cost cards are overpowered. Think about high-powered 5-cost cards for a moment. Darkhawk, Devil Dino, Ronin, Ajax, Red Skull, Iron Man. All of these cards can put out decent power, yes, but they require at least half of a deck's worth of supporting pieces to get there. Meanwhile, we have so many 410s that even the Zabu Scar deck has been cutting some of them, as well as pieces like Galacta, Malekith, Iron Lad, and now Captain Carter that put out more effective power than some of these 5-drops with additional upside. That's not even mentioning 4-cost control options, Shang-Chi and Enchantress, who are control staples. 5-cost cards need across-the-board numbers buff to be more competitive than their 4-cost alternatives. There's a reason that Arrow wasn't being run in a wide variety of decks as a 5-10. It wasn't because she was good, it was because every alternative was bad. Give me 5-9 Cersei, give me 5-7 Nimrod, give me 5-8 Black Bolt, give me 5-4 Dino, give me 5-9 Spider-Woman. These cards need a higher base stat line to justify running them as payoff or enable their payoffs. I think this is generally something that is true, and it's something I've talked about before, where it's like, why are there more 4-drops that are double digits than there are 5-drops that are double digits? That's weird, right? And I think a lot of it has to do with the interplay with interaction. You mentioned Enchantress and Shang-Chi, and I think a lot of that is sort of a direct application of those cards' effect on the game. Because at 5, you are now no longer able to play that alongside something else with meaningful power. That is fundamentally what 5 says. At 4, you can Zabu it down, you can Serra it down, you can play multiple 4s on the same turn a lot of the time. That gives them this additional flexibility, which makes them less of an investment that is, in turn, less bad for you when it gets blown up by something like Shang-Chi and Enchantress. So 5s are in a really awkward spot where it's like basically impossible for them to be anything other than heavy investments. And to me, 5s are like the most problematic card type in Snap because of this. It puts real design restrictions on them. Every 5, in my view, is either a Legion, which is to say, smaller than Shang-Chi, utility card, pretty reasonable body, but not like, oh my god, or it is a Devil Dinosaur, which is to say, scales very high, requires certain things to happen, but you can get like 17 points out of it. And I think you can really see like which cards are Legions and which cards are Devil Dinosaurs. And there really isn't a lot of overlap between them because anything that was big enough to be a Devil Dinosaur can't really also give you utility in addition to that. And so I think that, like, for example, the Spider-Woman you proposed, like, that is kind of a legitimately powerful card because I think there's only so many times they can do 5-9 on the body so it doesn't get Shang-Chi'd, and then additional stuff to give it effectively more power. Like, what you're basically saying is Spider-Woman, 5-12 can't be Shang-Chi'd. That's a pretty good card. That's like 5-12, I'm saying in the context of like, let's say there's 3 on average that you're playing. Like, that's a pretty good card. It's okay. But there's not really much room to make that card much better unless you over-index for, say, let's say you make it apply -2, and then it's, let's say we're getting 3 procs on average off of that. It's a 5-9 at -2. That's an unshang-chiable 5-15. And it's like, that is, I think, like, this general space is the biggest argument against Shang-Chi. And to be clear, I think Shang-Chi brings a lot more benefit to the game than he takes away. But stuff like this is a tangible example of where his influence plays. And it's because, like, if you are playing a 5, that 5 gets blown up, you are playing almost every 5, either with the explicit intention of it not getting Shang-Chi'd because it's below, or with the explicit intention of it being a lane winner on its own that you do not have to reinforce on turn 6. Which is why I think it's so weird that you brought up Arrow. Because to me, Arrow at 5'10 was not being played in a wide variety of decks. She wasn't. I don't recall that happening at all. Arrow at 5'10 was being played in the deck that cared about 10s. It was people playing Scream decks. Like, she was being played in the decks that she went in. I don't recall her ever being generically good at 5'10. And I think that, again, like, that is sort of indicative of the Shang-Chi issue, where it's like, this is a card that is so punishing for this specific type of card. And it really, I think, restricts the design space of 5s specifically. To be clear, still think Shang-Chi is a net positive for the game, but one of the areas in which he is a negative is this. Get rid of Proving Grounds. There should be no reason to play in Proving Grounds, just give us unlimited silver tickets. No one wants to enter Proving Grounds against someone who doesn't snap just to get it over with. I think this is halfway there. I don't think I need to get rid of Proving Grounds. I think maybe they should get rid of silver and just have it be Proving Grounds and gold and then, you know, infinite, right? Like, that seems like a better way to approach Conquest to me. I'm not the biggest Conquest gamer, which is a massive understatement. I do not play the game mode, so I'm not going to spend too much time talking out of my ass about something I'm not a full expert in. But to me, Proving Grounds is actually the good part of that mode for a lot of people because it enables them to have a consequence-less area. And while you are suggesting give people unlimited silver tickets, it seems like kind of a convoluted way to get to just get rid of silver instead. Scream is one of the most annoying cards in Snap. It's good too, though I know it's statistically within reasonable bounds or whatever. I just hate having my cards moved around against my will, and then the debuffs, and then trying to make sure I don't get clogged. It's all a mess. I think that this having as many downvotes as it is actually surprising to me. When I picked out the ones I wanted to talk about, I didn't just want to talk about the most upvoted ones, because those are going to be the least likely to be hot takes, right? So I wanted ones with like a good mix a lot of the time. I was surprised that this was as controversial as it seemed to be, where this is, I think, a very anodyne take. If anything, it understates Scream. Like, Scream is not just annoying. She is, like, probably one of the best cards in the entire game of Marvel Snap. And I realize that people are going to have different definitions of, like, best cards or whatever, right? Like, Sam Wilson goes in more decks than Scream, but Scream is like an Agent Venom level build around where, like, that is a deck purely on the power of Scream. And when I say Agent Venom, I mean unnerfed Agent Venom. Like, that is a very different thing from a generically applicable card like Old Angela or current Sam Wilson or current Iron Patriot or current Kate Bishop or any of that stuff, right? Like, Scream is a totally different kind of card. And I think that's sort of why I'm willing to give her a pass, is because while she is ridiculously strong, and I could very easily see nerfing her again, like, I'm not going to sit here and act like that's not a thing. I worry that, like, her strength is such that if you take it away, that deck may not be around anymore. And maybe you're okay with that. Maybe, like, I think there's a lot of people who are okay with certain decks not being around anymore. But on the whole, like, hitting an archetype staple like that, I would worry personally about what I would need to do to improve the other cards in that deck so that I didn't kill it by hitting the linchpin. Banana finishes should be hard-coded to only be able to have the banana flare. What I mean is, when splitting a card and you hit a banana finish, it should always have banana flare. It should then be impossible to roll a banana finish again. Banana finish is clearly meant as a joke, and if you want the banana finish, you most likely only want the banana flare on it to match. This keeps it as a funny one-off joke without eating splits under a system that already has a huge amount of possibilities. I love this because they are exactly correct about my desires for banana cards. That is the most correct anyone has ever been about my personal thoughts, at the very least, right? Like, I do want a banana split, but only if it's double banana. I don't want single banana Kirby Crackle. That's ridiculous. That's half the joke. You want the full joke. If you want to make the joke, you want the double of the joke. I love this. This is a great take, and they should absolutely do it. Playing Mr. Negative is the lamest thing you can do in Snap. Now, I did say I was going to specifically look for the controversial ones to some degree. I didn't want this to just be incredibly, like, anodyne, obvious things that are all good. This is one of the most controversial ones in the entire thing. And I will say this. I don't like the idea of shaming people for deck choices. As someone who is a noted hater of certain archetypes, that doesn't mean I hate the players who play them. It means I don't think they're a healthy thing for the game. So I'm going to steel man a little bit here and assume that that is what they are saying about Mr. Negative, and it's not just, I lost to Mr. Negative. I think there are reasonable gameplay critiques to be made for Mr. Negative specifically. I think you could look at it and you can say, it kind of sucks that there is this all or nothing yes or no deck that just will go over the top of you and requires you to play certain interaction to beat it and gets to bully snap you. And I think a lot of the reason people don't like Mr. Negative is because one of the most fun things in Marvel Snap is cope, staying, and winning. And Mr. Negative sort of prevents you from doing that. My impression, and I don't know if this is data backed, but it is the impression I have, is that vast majority of Marvel Snap players retreat less than they should. And if we operate under the assumption that that is true, I think it is really easy to see why something like Mr. Negative could be so hated, because people just don't like to retreat when they're losing. And I fully understand that, because it does feel bad to look at your opponent, they're snapping after playing a Ravona. You don't know if they're bluffing or not. You just have to guess, and if you stay, you might get screwed, and if you don't, well, you did the smart thing, but it doesn't feel like doing the smart thing. I think that's a reasonable critique of Mr. Negative. Totally reasonable. I think it's a reasonable enough deck to exist, though, and I think it's probably a good thing that decks like this can exist in Marvel Snap, because in another game, which did not have a snapping mechanic, a retreat mechanic, a stakes double mechanic, a combo deck that had like a 45 to 48% win rate would be bad. That's just like flat out bad. Win rate's the only thing that matters. So Mr. Negative existing sort of adds texture to the game in that, like, this is a deck that doesn't always do the thing, but when it does the thing, it puts you in control of the game in a really powerful way. That's a feeling you can't really get in a lot of other games, in the sense of, like, the actual value of a game can increase based on your decisions that are informed by the deck you're playing and the cards you've drawn. Mr. Negative is a great deck to illustrate that principle and to exist generally. I do think that it does sort of suck a little bit that its endgame is so unbeatable now. Like, Gore's addition to that deck was really relevant. The extra copies that it gave it for Mystique allows Mr. Negative to sort of limp into games in ways that it probably shouldn't be able to do. I do think there is an argument that Mr. Negative is maybe a little bit too, and I don't even mean like too good when it doesn't Mr. Negative, but it's like a little bit too hard to snap into. I could buy that argument, because it used to be if they weren't accelerating a Mr. Negative out, you could just snap them. But now it's like, okay, I have to actually think and figure out if I can beat literally just a Gore Mystique. Like, they can just beat you with that. It's like a Gore Mystique, a Gore Taskmaster, stuff like that. We're just like, oh man, I might actually just lose to that depending on what I'm doing. And I do think that, like, the fact that their floor has risen significantly is relevant to this discussion. I don't think it's relevant enough that I would go as far as this take, though. Revert Blade. Discard should be wiped from existence as an archetype. We can start by reverting the Blade buff. Okay, so I do love how, like, a lot of the controversial takes are just someone saying, this deck sucks. I have to, like, interpret that as, like, okay, what is it that you hate about this deck? Let's zoom through it. Why do we want to deal with Blade as the answer for that? I think Discard's a really interesting one to nail on there, though, because Discard is a deck that, to me, it feels like it's undefeated in theoretical matchups. Like, if you'll pardon the college football, like, analogy here, after, like, a bad team loses in the playoffs, someone's like, oh man, 9-3 Alabama would have played better than that team. And it's like, you know, Maybe, but you don't know that. Discard is like theoretically undefeatable. And I'm trying to talk about a specific dynamic here where it's like, this is a deck that when you think about it, you're like, I have no idea how I beat this. And then you play against them and they draw badly and you're like, oh, that's how I beat this, right? I remember now. Like, Discard is so much more a combo deck than people think. And so it ends up being in this weird spot where it's like, it's a Mr. Negative-esque deck with, again, it's got a much higher floor than you think. Like, this is a combo power level deck that has a good win rate. If there's anything problematic about it, I would say that it is that. But then you have like very impossible to win matchups like Mr. Negative because you just don't get to play tech and things like that. Discard is a deck that occupies a space where it sort of explicitly crushes mid-range a lot of the time. And so that leads a lot of good players to say basically every time any sort of mid-range deck gets nerfed, it's like, oh man, Discard's going to be the new thing because Discard was already good into the previous nerfed mid-range deck, and now the mid-range decks are going to be even worse, and then it just never seems to happen. Like, Discard never seems to be the best deck. It just seems to be, like, pretty solid consistently. It's just never like, oh my god, tier 1, we got to do something about that. Like, I would buy that there's a Discard nerf to be made. Take a point of power off Bullseye. Take a point of power off MODOK. I would not buy that what they need to do is obliterate the archetype. Like, just knock a little bit off, maybe? Like, that's really all I can see as an argument. Like, I don't really think this is a deck that is vastly overpowered in the way it seems to be talked about. I think it's actually just kind of a remarkably fair deck. Like, it's not like it's doing anything that ridiculous or that impossible to interact with or that surprising. You shouldn't be getting 8 cubed by Discard in ways that are bad. Like, you can still get 8 cubed by Discard if you're like, you know, all right, I'm 50% to stay. I'll do it if I'm gonna win. But you shouldn't be like getting 8 cube casseroled by this deck anymore. It just, that feels like it might be on you. Bring back Series 4 and 5 cards in Collector's Reserves. After being Series 3 complete, we no longer receive Series 4 and 5 cards from Collector's Reserves. Well, yes, but also before being Series 3 complete. Anyway, while the recent card acquisition changes are really nice, it would also be nice for players to be able to obtain cards from other means, even if the rates are low. This would give more motivation for players to progress through the collection track. Being able to get surprise cards while progressing would be a nice surprise, and maybe even encourage players to experiment with using those cards. Okay, full context, now I understand what they meant. They didn't mean we no longer get Series 4 and 5 cards from the Collector's Reserves, they meant we no longer get cards from the reserves. Here's the thing, as someone who played when they had super low rates, it sucked. I didn't open a Series 5 card one time, and I played the entire time that system existed. The entire time it existed, I didn't open a single Series 5 card on the collection track. It was ass. This was not a good system. And I think that what you hunger for is unfortunately not going to be available. Like, what you hunger for is the feeling of gaining more cards. It's just not going to happen. If they put them on there, the rates would have to be so astronomically low that the only purpose they would have is rage baiting on Reddit. Whatever the rates they put on these cards would only be good for going on Reddit or the official Marvel Snap Discord and saying, I can't believe they're so greedy as to do this. It would probably be a net negative for the game for them to even try. Like, I can't overstate this. Like, the numbers they would have to put on there, as someone who played through numbers that are probably more generous than the numbers they would have to put on there in whatever this system looks like, because they're being way more generous with tokens comparative to back then, it would be awful and would only be good for YouTubers who want to make thumbnails that are like, WTF, can't believe Second Dinner's so greedy. Like, I feel like that's probably a non-starter. No gold tickets in Collector Reserve. We get more than enough gold tickets in Conquest. See, takes like this are why I had to do more than just whatever the most upvoted things were. Because I originally was like, I should just do the most upvoted things, right? Like, that, surely people will understand that. But Unfortunately, the most upvoted things are like not hot takes at all. This is not a hot take. This is like, yeah, sure, dude, I'm with it. I would love if I got something that wasn't that, right? The problem is they need something in there to be not worthless, but like not worth a lot. So if they replace them with boosters, you guys would probably get mad at that too. So what you're actually saying is they should give you more currency. And it's like, okay, I mean, like, yeah, it's the least hot take in the world to say they should give me more stuff for less input. Players need to get good. Why Hela? Why Arisham? Why Shang-Chi? Why not enough bots in ladder? Why I want more free wins? The devs are very talented. They work very hard to simultaneously balance and freshen up the meta. They've also given players many ways to tackle problematic metas. There are currently more than 400 cards in the game. So if you're struggling in Marvel Snap, you need to tighten up, use your noggin, and figure out how you're going to start taking more W's with your deck building or your gameplay. This is really interesting because I'm going to push back on one aspect of it. I don't hate, I'm why Hela, right? But my argument for why Hela is bad is because she makes most of those 400 cards not relevant. Because a lot of cards in Marvel Snap are, I play you, you play me and I give you points. And it's like a reasonable number of points for the amount of energy I cost. You play me and there's points that happen because of that. And then maybe there's some synergies that make me some more points, right? The reason Hela is so odious to me is because so many of those synergies get fully obsoleted, and so many of those cards get fully obsoleted by a deck that is able to power dump the way that Hela is on the final turn of the game in such a way that, like, it just sort of doesn't matter. Like, it's a stat check, right? Hela exists as a stat check that, unfortunately, when she's good, because the only reason to play her when she's good is because of this, is stat checking, like, 90% of the cards in the game. And that is a sort of odious position for a deck to take, especially one without a lot of counterplay. And I think, you could argue like Mr. Negative is a stat check that nobody passes, but the counterplay is there. And I think that that's a sort of real difference here. I do think that on the whole, people complain about a lot of stuff. And I think that that's normal, right? Like, I complain about snipers and like all that. Like I'm coping. Like, I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm above cope. I cope all the time. It's a lot easier to believe that some external force is conspiring against you than it is to believe that you got unlucky or you played bad or any of those things, because those are hard. One of them is hard because it requires admitting fault, and the other one is hard because it requires admitting the fundamental random nature of life. Both of those things are not easy for people to do, and so while it is easy to just say, get good, there is a lot of like actual, genuine, philosophical and psychological stuff going on here that I do think that just saying, quit complaining, get good, elides. These are real problems that people have. Like, it's a pretty normal thing to externalize blame. That's like a very human thing to do. And if you can rise above that, I have nothing but admiration for you. That is a very good thing, and I try to do it. But it's always sort of, I don't know if it's human nature. Again, there's like a philosophical conversation to be had here. But externalizing blame and being able to keep moving through things is in some ways useful to us. I would love, personally, if I were not the kind of person that did this. It's definitely an issue I struggle with greatly. I work on it and I try. But I don't think it's necessarily fair to be like, well, the only reason you externalize blame is because you suck. Because I'm pretty good at this game, and I still do it too. Daily credits in shop is BS. 25 credits every 8 hours is so BS. Just make it 75 per day. Look, man, you're playing a mobile game. They're going to do stuff to make you open the app, because when you open the app, there's a big button that says play. It says play, you click play, and then you're playing their game, and then maybe you'll make a purchase. They're just going to do things like that. Like, it used to be 50 per day. I liked it better when it was 50 per day. I don't think there's a reasonable ask for it to be 75 per day other than, I don't know, I want it, right? Like, if you wanted to say go back to 50 per day, I probably wouldn't be as harsh on this, but it's saying I would like to, they made a change to boost engagement at the expense of an extra 25 credits a day. They were like, we're going to spend an extra 25 credits a day for every player in the game if they want to log in and collect it in exchange for them just logging in. And now you're like, actually, I want the 25 credits and I don't want to log in. And it's like, I want that too, but like, I don't think it's a realistic thing to ask when they're clearly making these changes to drive certain metrics, right? Like, I don't really think that's just the kind of thing a company will do. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, they said they might go to tokens in there. Maybe that's what you're talking about, but I still think we're probably going to have to like log in to get them. I don't know. I find it hard to look at a change they clearly made sacrificing X amount of monetization for Y amount of login metrics, right? And then be like, actually, we should get both the monetization and the original login metrics. Like, I don't know, man. I don't think I can really... They did it for a reason. As much as I'm willing to be like, maybe that's a dumb reason, I think they did it for a reason. Going back on it would be kind of dumb too. Iron Patriot should cost 3. He's the most busted 2-drop in the game, yet he went for almost 3 full seasons with no nerfs. Agent Venom was put down for less. I disagree with God. Like, 2 of the 3 sentences here, like, other than the one that is objectively true, which is he went almost 3 seasons without nerfs. Actually, yeah, no, he went, yeah, that's true. Everything else here is wrong. Like, everything else is not true in the slightest. So, I mean, sentence for sentence, right? Let's go through it like that. Okay. He's the most busted 2-drop in the game. No. And he wasn't either. The second Sam Wilson came out, Sam Wilson was better. It took me like a week to figure that out, but maybe a week or 2 into the Sam Wilson season, I was making videos saying, this is the best card in Marvel Snap. This is better than Iron Patriot. He is the guy. This is a crazy, crazy card. And even then, I think, you can make a very coherent argument for Scream, I think, would be a very reasonable argument for a better 2-drop than Iron Patriot. Iron Patriot was a very good card. Is now a pretty good card. And I think that what really people are feeling is that there is this ubiquitous presence of the card, and they maybe don't like the mini game, I'm not really sure, but like the ubiquitous presence and the swinginess of it that I think is really what surprises people and makes them feel bad. Because there's a couple of things that people don't like about decks in Marvel Snap. It's like decks that just win out of nowhere on the final turn of the game, and decks that bully Snap you early. These tend to be the kind of decks people complain about, and you see those dynamics in Iron Patriot. Oh, Iron Patriot, I got a good card, I know I'm winning it, I'm snapping you on turn 2 or turn 3, and you're just like, oh man, am I supposed to leave? That sucks. Or you stay, and then they blow you out with a 2-energy gore, and you're like, oh man, that sucks, I couldn't play around that, except you could have left when they snapped you. And it's like, this is a card that has dynamics people don't like, but I don't think it was ever the best 2-drop in the game outside of its release month. Want to be clear about that. For the last 2 months, Sam has been better in Iron Patriot's own niche as generically applicable to, and I would argue Scream has been better as a build-around too. And then you get to Agent Venom died for less. No. Agent Venom died for way more. Agent Venom had a deck that was 60% win rate at like high infinite with thousands of games of sample size, and it was just a specific 12-card list. There was no changing, no nothing. Nothing was challenging the deck. Nothing was forcing it to adapt. It was just better than everything else. Iron Patriot, say what you want about him. Iron Patriot goes in a lot of decks. He's a supplemental piece in a bunch of decks. He's a build-around piece in other decks. Agent Venom was not that. Agent Venom was, you do one thing with this card, and it's way better than everything else in the game. So no, I do not think Iron Patriot, Agent Venom was killed for way less. What is true is that, took 3 months. That is true. It came out in January, and they nerfed him now. So, good job on that part. but the rest of this, I think, is way off. All right, y'all. I wanted to thank the official Marvel Snap Discord server for letting me do this. I really appreciate everyone who submitted hot takes on that server. Thank you so much. This was a blast. I had a ton of fun reading these, choosing the ones I wanted to talk about, and then just going through it. Thank you. I really do appreciate it. And I did want to say, I guess, the downvotes, it felt like were a little much, y'all. Like, I'm looking for hot takes, and a lot of the most upvoted stuff is just stuff everyone agrees on, which I guess is something I should have expected. But I do wonder if there were people who participated in good faith and were like, here's a take I know people will disagree with, and then it got super downvoted and people were, and they felt bad because, of course, it's a take everyone disagrees with. That's the point. I do think that I really appreciate the opportunity to do this. So shout out to the Marvel Snap official Discord server. Shout out to all my viewers, and I will see you in the next one.